I'm sick, if you can't tell. Ha. What's up, demons? Welcome back to my channel. Now, it is Pride Month, which is one of my favorite times of the year, and I wanted to make a video devoted to a topic prominent in this month: sexuality. What I'm going to cover in this video is extremely personal and frankly scary for me to talk about. I don't really talk to my parents or friends or really anyone about this, but I wanted to make a video discussing this topic because it means so much to me. My sexuality is something I've struggled with for a lot of years. I've internally oppressed it, ignored it, cried about it. I've even asked God about it, and I am still not in a place, even after all of that, that I can look in the mirror and label myself as something. And that's okay. I'm so young, and I have so much to learn about the world and about myself, so I don't need a label right now. But I wanted to share this story with you because it is something that I've spent a lot of years thinking about, and why not share that, you know? The earliest back I can think as to when my sexuality was a prominent thing in my life was 3rd grade. And I know that that's early, and don't get me wrong, I hadn't started questioning yet, but for context, I live my life very heteronormative. I was raised on stuff like Harry Potter and Narnia, and I would pretend to be a character in these stories, and the character that I pretended to be was in love with the male characters in the stories. You know, Harry, Prince Caspian, Peter, Edmund, all of them. I would pretend that I was like their girl or something. So I always just assumed that guys were the only option. So 3rd grade, I was best friends with these 2 boys, and by the way, I will be leaving all names undisclosed, and while that is for privacy, it's also because I can't remember most of these people's names to save my life. But anyway, I was friends with these 2 boys, and we would, play pretend Harry Potter, and we'd use little sticks on the playground as wands. It was great. Typical child stuff. Now, I was a lot closer to one of these boys than I was to the other one, and I got closer to the other one the next year, but for some reason, this one boy had me smitten, or at least I thought at the time. In the moment, I was like, this is my favorite person. I love him. I want to marry him. He was like everything to me. Well, looking back, he was just my best friend. But we held hands, which made all the other kids assume that we were a thing. And we hugged when we said goodbye, which was just another reason for all of these snotty little brat kids to come up to me and be like, "Hi, is he your boyfriend?" And I'd be like, "No." Gross. But I didn't know how to explain to kids that I, a girl, just wanted this guy to be my friend. Even I didn't know how to explain that to myself. I thought maybe he is the love of my life. And for the longest time, that's how I thought our friendship was. And I thought that that's how he saw it too. As a 3rd grader, you don't know that you're allowed to just be friends with guys, because up until that point, you've only seen and heard things that are like, this guy and this girl were friends, but then they started making out, and that's where the trouble started. Like, that's what you're raised on. So how was I supposed to explain that as a 3rd grader to other 3rd graders? And the worst thing was, I loved him, but I didn't know that you could love someone platonically. Now I say I love you to all of my guy friends, but back then, whenever I wanted to say I love you, I just worried myself more into thinking I had a crush on this guy who really I just loved as a friend, because that's all he was. So this is where the problem started. 3rd grade passed, thank God, and so did 4th grade, where basically the same thing happened but with the other boy, and then it was right into 5th grade. And this is where everything went downhill. 5th grade was where I realized I might actually not be normal. Fifth grade was the first time I had a friend who was a girl and I was genuinely close to. Like, she understood me and I understood her, and we were just, like, the best of friends, and I hadn't experienced that with anyone before. We hung out all the time, and fun fact, it's not normal to wonder what would happen if you kissed your best friend at a sleepover. I just recently found out that that's not something straight people worry about. Now, at this point in time, I don't think I even knew the word gay, let alone anything about the LGBT community. I don't think I ever heard that word until the gay marriage was legalized, which was after my 5th grade year ended. So I still assumed that I was straight, but I didn't really have a word for straight. I just knew I was into dudes. So because I assumed that I was into dudes, I thought that wanting to kiss this girl was normal. And it must have been normal because I was right on the verge of puberty. My first period happened like 3 months later. I was like on the cusp of womanhood. I told myself it was fine, and it was, because my best friend had a guy friend. And you know what that means? I had a crush. And he was cute, you know? He played football. He had like ginger hair. He was like funny and cute. And I already said cute. What other terms can you use to describe a boy? But as much as I kept telling people that he was my crush, I didn't like him. Not like that, at least. I didn't. But it's what everyone, including my best friend, expected of me, so I played along. And at the end of the year, I even wrote him a letter confessing my feelings to him. And while I'm not sure he ever read it, it's probably for the best that he never did, because it had to have been the most platonic love letter ever written in the history of time. It was like, you're funny and a good friend, and I like you. Like, that's how it was written. It wasn't anything amazing or romantic. And honestly, I don't know if he ever did wind up reading it. So we move on to 6th grade. 6th grade was the first of the 3 worst years of my entire life, for so many reasons. Going into 6th grade, I had no idea who I was or who I was supposed to be. And because I was so focused on figuring myself out, my grades slipped, and I had a mental breakdown because I passed social studies with a C+. It was that kind of a year. I had no sense of self, no confidence. It was around the same time I started learning more about the LGBT community, and for some reason, knowing more about the community made me feel like wrong, stressed, guilty, something. And this is where the sick feelings started. Even the thought of liking someone the same gender made this pit grow in my stomach. There was this mix of guilt and confusion, and above all, this feeling of overwhelming fear. I didn't want to be this thing that I knew absolutely nothing about. I didn't want to be different. Despite being raised by comparatively normal, accepting parents, I didn't know how they felt about being gay and other gay people. And despite going to a church that didn't preach fire and brimstone and make me think that I was gonna go to hell for liking this girl, I was still so worried. I thought it must have been wrong. Like I was broken or something, that this thing wasn't real and I shouldn't be feeling it. So I ignored the sick feeling, and I just told people that I didn't have a crush on a guy, because boys are gross anyway, right? You know, hashtag relatable. I managed to get through that first middle school year, but I felt myself sinking into this depression. I was constantly repressing myself and telling myself that it was just a phase and that I'd get over it. I'm just confused because I'm exposing myself to something I've never heard of before. Not because I might be this thing. Because I don't like girls like that. I never have. How could that change? And then 7th grade happened, the most confusing, awful year of my entire life. I never thought I would get out of this dark place. I was literally wearing a mask to school every day because I didn't know who I was. Everything seemed so much simpler in 3rd grade, but even then it wasn't easy. I still didn't know who I was in 3rd grade. It was just easier to pretend I did. Now, when it comes to friends, I was the only straight person in my friend group, and that didn't exactly help how I was feeling. And I didn't talk to anyone about any of this, by the way. I kept it all bottled up. I genuinely thought it was just a phase, and that I would get over it. But I think not telling anyone is what sent me to the dark place. And you know what? I even dated a guy. He was the twin brother of one of my best friends. I think he actually liked me, but I led him on. And I played along because I thought maybe a relationship can start from a place of absolutely no emotions at all and grow to something, and that's not true. That's not how relationships work. I felt like I was being suffocated. Not even that I was drowning, but that I was being buried under miles of what felt like sand. That I couldn't dig myself out if I tried to, and the pressure from all of this weight that I was carrying with me every day would eventually crush me. I hated this part of me. In that year, whenever we wound up going to church and they would give us those couple minutes to just have a quick conversation with God, I would get on my knees, shaking, feel that pit in the bottom of my stomach, and ask God to just make me normal. Because that's all I wanted. I just wanted to be normal. And then 8th grade happened. I managed to get through a good amount of the year without thinking about it and feeling that pit in my stomach, and I thought it was a pretty good year. And then March happened, and it changed. So in March, the kid whose twin I dated the year before texted me, and this was incredibly alarming as this guy had no conversational skills at all. I could have texted him 13 times in a row and he wouldn't have responded until the next week. That's how bad this guy was at texting, and he messaged me first. So obviously something was going down. And then he told me something that I was so totally not ready to hear. And it was just that my best friend, this girl, had moments before he texted me told him that she had a crush on me. For the first time in months, that sick feeling came back. My feelings about this girl were already confusing. She was my best friend, and she was the best friend I'd ever had. I trusted her more than I'd ever trusted anyone. But just like that girl in 5th grade, I knew that my feelings might be a little bit more than just, I love her because she's my best friend. But I never dwelled on that. We were just friends, and she would never like me anyway. I'm gross. But I was wrong, and that complicated things. I didn't know what to say to my guy friend. How do I explain 3 years worth of confusion and repression and all of this stuff in one text short enough for his attention span? There was no way I was going to be able to explain how I felt about this situation. But, I tried. I told him that I'm straight, but, maybe I had feelings for her, like a very confusing text that even he responded to with a question mark. He asked me if I could like her like that, and I said probably, and he told me something that I didn't realize I needed to hear until he said it. He told me that it didn't matter, that if I liked her, who cares how I identify? All that did matter was that I liked this girl, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do about that real quick. And as much as those words helped, I never wound up doing anything which I regret, but we had a good end of the year together. We went to go see Love, Simon, and when Martin outs Simon, she grabbed my hand, and I swear to God I almost threw up in my popcorn bucket. Only this time it wasn't because of the sick feeling. It was butterflies. Yeah, I was totally straight. I never told that girl anything, really. I hinted at it, and I think my guy friend told her what I said that night, but we stayed friends until the end of the year, and then we wound up at different high schools and lost contact, but she was my first girl crush, and I won't forget that. That next summer was probably the most important summer of my entire life, and it wasn't even because I figured myself out. It was just because I accepted this part of me. So the summer of 2018, when finally, after so many years of internalized depression, I finally opened up to myself about myself and accepted who I am. I finally made myself comfortable with who I am, and I'm happy with that person. And I haven't felt that sick feeling since. Now I'm in high school, and while I spent the first couple months silent and quiet and closeted and alone, I made friends at some point, and all except one of them is queer in some way, shape, or form, and because of that, I became more open about myself. And they all liked me for that person, and I thank them because I stayed so quiet for so long because I was so worried no one would accept me. But they did. I'm in a really good place now, and while the darkness occasionally comes knocking at the door, I don't let him in for more than a cup of coffee and then he's back on his way. I am finally okay with who I am, and that means so much to me, and that's why I'm making this video. All it took was time. I needed to be patient with myself, and I wasn't. What I realized now more than ever is how influential and necessary videos like this and Instagram and other YouTubers are, because if I hadn't watched Connor Franta and Troye Sivan and Shane Dawson open up about their sexualities, if I didn't have that kind of positive, influential exposure, I would never have accepted this part of me. Because that's all it is. It's just another part of me. Look, wherever you are sexuality-wise is okay. Whether you are still in the closet, out and proud, have no idea what to label yourself as, and are a lost, scrambling mess, or have an exact definite definition of yourself, it's okay. You're okay. And if you don't feel okay now, you are going to feel okay someday. Trust me, I've been where you are, and I feel okay. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. This is just another part of you that you get the great journey of learning. I thought I was so lost. I thought I was going to be forever alone and trapped inside this thing I could never understand. But I just needed someone to tell me that it was okay, and that I didn't have to understand who I was to love that person. So, this is me telling you, you're not alone, and you're gonna be okay. So that's my story. I hope that you enjoyed it, and all of my cheesy little words of wisdom there at the end. I hope that all of you are having a very happy Pride Month. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share this video, all of that fun stuff. And on that very gay note, ooh, wah, ah, ah, ah.